How many people wouldn't do this if your life depended on it? Okay, there we go. I love honesty. You know, most people are like, they're going to what? They're going to ask each other questions. So you're going to learn a lot, but nobody's done this before. So please be very cool. We're going to hold the clapping till the end and stuff so we can make this really tight and nobody gets cheated out of their time. And for sure, we're not doing any weird booing or anything creepy like that because it will be on YouTube, but only these guys will be on YouTube. All of us won't. Yeah. All right, Mr. Murray, what do you want? Heads, tails? Terry's got the coin. Oh, what are you doing?
Interesting coin.
Oh, tell them about the coin.
Interesting coin. We have a lot of problems we need to have fixed. We need to have fiscal responsibility, but we also have to be fair about that. We have two sides to every argument here, and that's probably what we're going to hear tonight. Anyway, the city of Reading needs to be fixed. Economically, I'm sure everybody would agree with that. So we have a handyman coin. And on one side is a plane, which will be tails. On the other side is a hammer, which will be heads.
Okay, what do we have? We have a
hammer.
We have a hammer?
And we have a plane.
A hammer and a plane. Who wants to be the hammer? Oh, that's a huge shock. Mr. Jones will be the hammer. That means Mr. Murray will be filing him down.
Ready? It's the plane.
The plane. Plane goes first. Yeah, plane. Oh, you could pick. Okay, you want to choose? Good. We're inventing this. Choose. You want to go last. Oh, so you kick, you receive. All right, we're off.
All right, well, thank you, Reading Tea Party Patriots, for having this event today. I do appreciate it. It has been an honor being your mayor of Reading for 2010. Stressful most of the time, but an honor nevertheless. Two of us today, both me and Ken Murray, we both say that we're fiscal conservatives, but I think after tonight, you're going to find one of us is not telling the truth. My first question to Ken is on Stillwater. I've been voting no on Stillwater since 2007, and he could have joined me those entire years, vote after vote after vote. I think it's a poor use of public funds. I don't think the city needs to be in the development role. I think we have developers for doing development. My first question to Ken is, how can you explain your yes answers if you don't want this to be your legacy?
Thank you for the question, Patrick. Stillwater was conceived by Pat Kite. It was strongly pushed by both the Chamber of Commerce and the Shasta Builders Exchange, who stood before the City Council in 2000 when I was actually not on the council, and encouraged the council to make it #1 priority for the City of Reading, which the council did. When I arrived on the council in 2004, there had already been several $100,000 spent on Stillwater, and I did vote to continue that project in keeping with the prior council and the wishes of the Chamber of Commerce. I happen to believe that it is the only project any elected official ever did to create jobs, even though every elected official has always promised to do something about jobs. They've never done anything. I have hope for Stillwater, and I believe it offers our best hope for jobs in the future.
Again, this is where me and Ken differ greatly. I too supported Kenwater before I got elected, and then once I got on council, the very first council meeting, a Stillwater issue came up, and I supported that issue. It was the first $10 million bond, and I tell you, I couldn't sleep all night. I knew it was wrong. No one had to tell me it was wrong. I knew it was wrong. The next day I went to our city manager and I said, if you can't explain this project, that it's a good use of public funds, I will be vocally not supporting this project any longer. And from that moment on, I voted no. Now, those votes were 4-1s for years. Land acquisitions, utility easements, right-of-ways, you name it, time, vote after vote after vote after vote. I stood alone on those votes, 4-1, but I knew it was the right thing to do. Now, did I know that I was going to stop it? Well, probably not with 4-1s, but if we had other people backing us up, we might have been able to stop it and save $26 million of your hard-earned money.
You'll forgive me if I don't stand up. I'm scheduled for back surgery in a couple of months, and getting up and down isn't the easiest thing in the world. I, too, want to thank you for allowing me to be here tonight. I think this is a fascinating format. I've never participated in one like this, but we'll give it a shot. Mr. Jones, in your campaign 4 years ago, you promised that if elected, you would get back to basics. You defined basics as appropriately staffing fire and police and paving streets. You also stated you were opposed to public subsidies to private developers. Have you kept your promises? And if so, please give me some examples.
First of all, I do support police and fire, but the benefits that we have today are completely unsustainable, and it's why the staffing is so poor. When we have law enforcement that can make 98.1% at the age of 50, plus they get to retire with the city paying half their health care benefits, we cannot sustain that, and in fact, all the council members have said the same thing. If we can get to a new formula that's more appropriate, we can have the proper staffing, and we deserve better staffing of our police and fire. It must be done. We simply cannot afford it. Those were tough decisions that I've had to make, but they were the right decisions. Does anybody like taking less pay and benefits? Absolutely not. We have put more money into streets and roads and infrastructure than the previous 5 years that I've been on council. We have made roads a top priority, and you've seen those roads, and we're still behind, but we have done a tremendous job on getting those roads. We are $40 million behind. We've got a long way to go.
Well, I guess, Mr. Jones, laying off 24 cops and I don't know how many firemen fits your definition of back to basics, but it doesn't fit my definition of back to basics. My definition of back to basics is fire everybody else first, and cops and firemen last. And as far as pay and benefits for public service employees is concerned, I know they're too high, they're unsustainable. I told every one of them that they're too high and they're unsustainable when they called and asked me to make a presentation to them. They know they're too high and unsustainable. All they're looking for is the opportunity to negotiate rationally.
Ken, my number 2 question is just that, the 3% at 50, we all know that that's unsustainable. Even the unions say it's unsustainable, but no one except the majority of this council has taken any action towards actually fixing it. Why? Because you're going up against police and firemen. Nobody wants to do that, but it's something that we must do, and there is no city in California that can afford a 3% at 50. No city can afford it. We simply cannot. We could afford it in 2002 and 2003 and 2004, but we cannot afford it today, and it must change. This council has stepped up and is doing the right thing.
I agree with Patrick. It must change. This council understands that it must change. I understand it must change. But the method of change is where Patrick and I disagree. Change should be negotiated, and change can be negotiated. I have not heard anyone in public safety say they are unwilling to negotiate. What they have said was that I would prefer to give up some of my income first before I give that up. To me, total compensation is the issue. I don't care which pocket they take their money out of. If we can't afford it and they're willing to take money out of their pockets, I'm willing to accept it.
They said this council has been unflexible. Give you an idea of some of the magnitude of some of the problems that we have. Just in the post-retirement health care, the city picks up whether you work for the city 1 day or 20 years. We pay for 50% of your health care premium once you retire. Again, that's 1 day or 20 years. That has gotten us into a $95 million unfunded liability. It has never been addressed before until this council. $95 million. When I got on the council, that was laid on my lap and said, you've got to start funding this. These are the kinds of things that we have to get our hands around today. Past councils have ignored them, and it leads us to these tough decisions. When I have a $95 million unfunded liability problem, my flexibility is gone. When I essentially have city reserves that are literally zero, and I say that zero because we borrowed $3 million out of risk management, and when you pay that back, our city reserves are zero.
I'm not sure where we are. Was that a question? So I'm supposed to respond to that?
No, you get a question.
Oh.
You just gotta get to the number first.
Mr. Jones, you've often said that you believe Turtle Bay should stand on its own without public subsidies. Turtle Bay received council approval to build a hotel. The $10 million construction costs will employ 25 local people, and upon completion, the hotel will employ 40 people. This project will create jobs and bring new taxable income into the city. Why did you vote no?
Great point, Ken. I voted no because they got free land. That's a museum there. They're supposed to be a nonprofit organization. That is a for-profit. They can pay for the land just like anyone else, just like me or you. If we were going to start a project, we would pay for our land, and we would pay for our entitlements, and we would put people on to work. And I supported them buying that property to build a motel. But it's another gift to Turtle Bay. And we have to start weaning Turtle Bay of these subsidies. We've been giving them millions and millions and millions of dollars, and it's something today that we can no longer afford to do. That is your land, and it's time that you got compensated for it, but instead we gave them free land, and that's unfair. What does it say to the rest of the motel and the hotel owners that they have to compete with something that has been subsidized by the public dollars, and they're going to be in direct competition with that? It simply wasn't right. I was for the motel, but they got to pay their own way.
It's very interesting, your take on all that. Turtle Bay has a 99-year lease on that land that was entered into by a council that neither Patrick or I were on. That's a contract. And unlike Mr. Jones, I think contracts are important. He would obviate them overnight under any circumstance, as he's shown with the employee unions and their contracts. Turtle Bay has under contract on lease that land. Mr. Jones has encouraged them to find a way to pay for themselves. They find a way to pay for themselves, and he doesn't like it. I would say that, you know, and to the last part of Mr. Jones' response, the night that he took the vote no, and he was again the minority, he said, the reason I voted no because I'm afraid that the hotel to be built by Turtle Bay will bleed the businesses on Hilltop Drive.
Unfortunately, I don't get to rebut that, but I will start off with a new question. Since we're both fiscal conservatives, on a special meeting as you called to order on December 21st as mayor, Mr. Murray, you approved modification to the city manager's contract with a 2% performance increase and a 20% bonus for performance for Mike Warren so that he could spike his retirement for the rest of his life. That was a vote taken at 1:35 on December 21st. That was a unanimous vote. Please explain your fiscal conservatism.
What was the date of that, Patrick?
Hello, that was December 21st, 12 p.m.
No, what year?
2005.
Oh, 2005. Actually, I don't remember the details of that, but I do remember working in closed session with the rest of the council, and as I recall, Mr. Warren had deferred some of his compensation and wanted to take it at the end. This spiking thing came up later, and in fact was investigated by the state of California, who found that the council did absolutely nothing illegal.
The problem is Mr. Murray can't say no. This is 20% that you get for the rest of the lives paid for by you, the taxpayers. At some point, we've got to say no. Mr. Warren now receives nearly $200,000 a year for the rest of his life, roughly, and then he has a job as CEO of Turtle Bay where he receives somewhere between $80,000 and $90,000. The conflict there seems to be pretty obvious. This was a classic case of spiking a benefit. There's no two ways around it, and council unanimously, as Mayor Murray at the time, supported. We can do better. Those things have come to us before too, and we have turned them down, saying, I don't think the public would like that. I don't think that's a good use of your hard-earned dollars to be spiking so that you get those things for the rest of your life. Is it not enough that these pay and benefits weren't already good enough that they needed to spike it 20% more?
It's very interesting, Mr. Jones. The fire chief that retired since you've been on the council and after I left the council retired with the same amount of income that Mr. Warren got. My next question is, you have pushed the development of a new shopping center at Oasis and I-5. The Mount Shasta Mall killed downtown. An Oasis Road shopping center will have a similar impact on the businesses on Dana Drive. The Oasis Road development is the project of your friend and developer, Don Levinson. Is that why you're pushing so hard?
I'm pushing Stillwater because that infrastructure needs to be done, and it needed to have been done 20 years ago. Just the other day, the Planning Commission approved another 100 homes done on the Oasis Road. That infrastructure cannot support more development. It's been behind. That overchange, that interpass, that overpass, I should say, was built in 1967, and it is the responsibility of the city of Reading. We have an obligation to get that up to current, safe standards, and it's behind. The development that occurs there, that's what developers do. I am not responsible for that. What I am responsible for, what Mr. Murray was responsible for, was infrastructure in the city of Reading that I said I would put a high priority to, and we are doing that. Oasis Road is very important. I-5 frontage and capturing money that otherwise would leak along I-5 is very important to the city of Reading. There are businesses in town that will leave to go outside if we don't retain them. It's very important.
And by that, Mr. Jones means Costco. And, you know, the only tenant that's been identified for that interchange is Costco, who wants to build twice as big a store, which is the leading edge of killing the Dana Drive shopping area, leaving a giant, empty, big box, just like Dana Drive killed downtown. The interchange is not the responsibility of the city of Reading. It's the responsibility of Caltrans and the federal government. And for your information, Mr. Jones, when the Oasis Road specific plan was adopted, it called for 7,000 apartment units to be built and serviced by the Oasis Road interchange. I voted no on that specific plan, and I still think it's a lousy use for land.
Question number 4, speaking of lousy uses, we have the soccer fields in Reading. That was a $10 million bond. Councilmember Murray supported that. That night at that meeting, that was before I was on council, it was discussed in length, and essentially that bond, when it gets done, is a $22 million taxpayer expended project to do soccer fields. And at those years, our infrastructure were down, as they still are today. That was a choice that the council had. That was a choice that Ken Murray had. They chose beautification projects over infrastructure projects. My question is, again, as a fiscal conservative, please explain that.
I'd be happy to. Mr. Jones has a history of not supporting anything having to do with young people unless it includes shooting things and killing them. The soccer fields had been promised by the city for over 20 years. It's important to me to support the young people in our community. It's important to encourage them to engage in healthy activities rather than unhealthy activities. It's proven statistically that the more we involve our children in the communities, the lower the illegitimate birth rate is. So I don't understand why Mr. Jones is unhappy with the soccer park. The fact that the $10 million bond will cost $22 million is the exact same situation that happens when you buy a home for $200,000 and wind up paying $450,000 for it. It would be nice to pay cash for everything, but the fact of the matter is we can't. And yet we have an obligation today to our young people, not after we've saved $10 million.
When I took this job, I promised the people that I would work on infrastructure. And that when you get labeled with or you find that you have a $40 million road problem, and the infrastructure costs would be even much greater than that, you have to work on it if you're going to possibly make any difference. The soccer field was a defining moment. Beautification, nice project, but at the expense of infrastructure. And we are behind. We have been systematically going for the beautification projects over this last decade instead of the core infrastructure. It's one of the things that got me elected. It's one of those things that I have not forgotten about. So it's not that I'm anti-youth, but I'm pro-infrastructure. We have to take care of the problems that we told you we were going to do. That was what I said I would do. I will continue to do those things when we get caught up. And when we get our hands around the infrastructure problems of our city, then we can tackle youth projects.
Right. Mr. Jones, you didn't vote for a hotel at Turtle Bay because it would bleed the Hilltop Drive merchants. You did vote for your friend Don Levinson's interchange at Oasis and I-5, which will bleed Dana Drive. What's the difference?
Mr. Murray forgets that our job is infrastructure. That's what we do. If it's inside the city limits, that infrastructure is ours. The overpass is not Caltrans. That is not their responsibility. It is the cities of Redding's. Mainline I-5 is Caltrans' responsibility. He misunderstands the concept of what is our responsibility and what is not. Our town is not done growing. We are going to expand. We are going. They have said all kinds of things. Is downtown dead today? It's better today than when I was a kid, but yet Dana Drive is thriving. As our town grows from the 100,000 that it is today, maybe 125 during daytime hours, it will grow and it will grow and it will support the new growth. My job is to get the infrastructure ready so that those developers can spend their hundreds of millions of dollars and put people to work into this town, and that's what we need right now.
Those developers, and I'll name them again, Don Levinson, has been after the city for years to give him money because he can't afford to do his own development. For years. He's asked the city to do a sales tax sharing agreement. He's asked for Mello-Roos bonds. He's asked for everything, a waiver of development fees. He's asked for everything in the world. I told Mr. Levinson, if you want money, then go out and get the neighbors affected by the interchange to form an assessment district and pay for it. Mr. Jones saw fit just to give it away.
Question number 5. Councilmember Murray, during his time as mayor, he elected to try to move something forward on the ballot to raise sales tax to pay for a new police facility. Now again, we both say we're fiscal conservatives, but yet he was willing to get something before the voters. That's a nice way to say that it's not my idea, I'm just putting it to the voters to see what happens. But if he had his way, he would have raised sales tax and burdened the taxpayers even more than what we already are paying today to build the new police station. Now I agree we do need a new police station, but it's a little tricky to do a $40 million infrastructure project when the city is nearly broke. That will come in time, and we will do it in time. If we had not put the beautification projects before the police station, we could have already done it. But I'm curious as to why Mr. Murray would want a sales tax increase.
You know, Mr. Jones, unless you have proof of that, I'm going to say that's a lie.
Well, to rebut that, Mr. Murray, you voted on that. That vote, that night, I was there, was it failed, if you remember, and you were a pro vote. Councilmember Dickerson, myself, and Rick Bizzetti voted no. You voted yes.
On what?
On moving a ballot initiative forward to let the public vote on raising the sales tax for a police facility, a quarter cent, if you remember it. Mr. Murray has a bad memory. He's getting a little older. I'm 42. I remember these things, especially when it comes to raising taxes. We pay enough taxes already. We pay enough taxes. If we would use the money correctly and wisely, we could do everything this city would ever need.
It's kind of interesting you talk about taxes, Mr. Jones. I've been paying taxes since you were 2 years old.
Most of them,
I have
anyways.
probably paid more taxes than you've made in income since you were 2 years old. So, you know, I'm not too excited about you talking to me about taxes. I hate taxes. If, you know, and I, frankly, my memory isn't that bad. There was nothing put on the ballot about taxes. If I ever said anything about taxes, it was, I am not adopting a tax as a city council without going on the ballot. Not, okay? And it didn't go on the ballot. I don't remember the vote. I don't remember the incidents. And yeah, I'm old and feeble-minded. But I still pay a lot of taxes. Mr. Jones, traffic impact fees are collected from developers to offset increased off-site traffic created for their subdivisions. Heavy traffic on Victor between Highway 44 and Hartnell, and on Hartnell between Victor and Chastaview, are the direct result of residential subdivisions that were built and paid traffic impact fees to offset the negative consequences on streets like these. How do you justify taking $1 million from traffic impact fees to pave an on-ramp to I-5 that isn't needed to support a single private developer in an area that hasn't contributed to traffic impact fees in the first place, doesn't have congestion, while ignoring streets that traffic impact fees were paid to improve?
Mr. Murray seems to be stuck up on Oasis Road. He denies that that infrastructure is part of what we do here in the city of Reading. We got an American Reinvestment and Recovery Act to pay for the majority of the loop on-ramp so we can improve circulation there today. It's not a permanent fix, but it's a start. We've been working on that. Mr. Levinson only wants to develop his land. He has asked the city to do your part and fix the interchange, which is everyone's responsibility. It's Gold Hill's responsibility. It's Terra Oaks. It's everybody that lives in that area's responsibility to fix the interchange, and he has been more than willing. He is not my friend. I barely know him. I don't know his middle name or his wife's name. But he is a developer, and we have many developers in this town, and they put the majority of the money into our town, which creates jobs. And it's what we need today. We have done more on roads in the last 5 or 6 years than the previous 5 or 6 years.
You know, I've heard that claim that you did more on roads. We did more on roads beginning before you got on the council. The same $4.5 million into street improvements I voted for and which passed before you got on the council was extended once you got on the council. The fact of the matter is that the money you used in traffic impact fees were paid for by the residents of Enterprise, and you chose to move it from Enterprise to benefit your developer friend, and that's the fact.
Question number 6. This has to do with our government accounting standards boards. We refer to it as Gatsby 45. This is the post-retirement health care premium that we pay. The city pays half of your premium if you work for the city for 1 day or for a career. The problem is that's an unfunded $95 million liability. The majority of this council has began to make changes. We have that unfunded liability today at $85 million. My question to Mr. Murray was, when were you going to take action to reduce your unfunded liability?
You know, Patrick, that problem didn't happen. I mean, the owing of the money has always been there. It's been there since the city got into PERS in the late 1980s, which I think is before you were even in college. The accounting, Gatsby 45, was an action by the accounting board to change the system for how it was reported. It didn't happen overnight. It happened over 35 years. The accounting board decided in the mid-2000s that you had to report it differently. And so, yes, there is approximately $95 million there. It has been accruing for 35 years. And it will take probably 25 or 30 years to get rid of it. What specific action did I take? Well, the last budget I voted on included $2 million set aside to start paying that down.
The problem with Mr. Murray is that they failed to take action in the 90s. They did not fund it. It was a liability. They've known about it forever. The new government standards started to identify the serious nature of it. And in fact, it brought Vallejo to its knees and bankrupted them because of their unfunded liability on and Gatsby 45 showing the unfunded liability. We have to act on these things. These are difficult things, but it's easy to talk about them. It's very difficult to tackle a $95 million unfunded liability. We have started either 2 tiers, meaning when new hires come on board, they do not get the post-retirement health care benefit, or a vested system. Councilmember Rick Bazzetti, while mayor, created a vested system so that we could stop the bleeding. It's the only way that we can get our hands around it. This majority, this council, started to make the improvements, not the past.
Mr. Murray's going to use one of his 5 float minutes to respond.
Gatsby 45 didn't have anything to do with the failure of Vacaville. Absolutely nothing. Nothing in Gatsby 45 requires that a payment be made at all, as a matter of fact. Nothing. Why didn't we recognize it in the 90s when I was on the council? We paid it out of cash flow. We have always paid it out of cash flow. The amount is growing as time goes on, but it isn't like there was never a payment made on it. It grew faster than income to the city grew. And because the accounting board changed the standards for accounting, did not put a requirement on the city that they had to do anything, the reason I voted to start paying on it was because it's important to address over the long term what was created over the long term without emasculating the city in the process. We have a police department that's universally recognized as one of the top agencies in the state, yet our officers' salaries and benefits are only average compared to other North State cities. 70% of the officers in Reading came from other agencies where they made substantially more money to be part of a professional agency where they could make a difference in the community. You're laying off officers. When the city next has an opening for an officer, do you believe we'll be able to attract quality? Or, as you have often stated, average is good enough?
Well, I don't think I've ever said average is good enough, but I think I was referring to Councilman Murray at the time. The problem we have is we cannot afford the 3% at 50. No city in California can, period. We cannot afford it. We have an excellent police and fire department. But it doesn't mean we can afford the 3% at 50. We have to get this under control. There is no other way around it. We have a quality of life here that attracts people, and our pay is superb, and I don't care who they look at, our pay is excellent. When you get a retire with 98.1% at the age of 50, and we pay your 50% of your health care premium for the rest of your life, you've got it good in Redding, California, I can tell you that. There is no officer, there is no firefighter that would trade me, or probably most of you, what we make. We cannot support it. This is one of those defining things where we let the unions control what happens at City Hall. If you support Ken Murray, Sandra Spears, and Francie Sullivan, you will have the unions running City Hall. Or do you want fiscal conservatives like myself, Rick Bazzetti, maybe Gary Cadd? That's what we have to do. We have to make tough decisions, and we respect our law enforcement. We do. We are not disrespectful. But the pay is excessive. We cannot afford it, and it is breaking this city. Our reserves are dangerously close to zero. If we would repay back risk management, they would be zero. For a city of 100,000, we cannot allow this. We have allowed ourselves to go down a road that is very dangerous. We can do better. We will do better come negotiations, and I will be there at that fight.
Well, you haven't done squat in negotiations so far. You know, nothing. In fact, as far as I know, you have no experience in negotiations. You're not a trained mediator. You're not a trained negotiator. And by the way, I am, and have the certificates to prove it. And I think that the problem is Your my way or the highway attitude has infected City Hall employees to the point that they don't want to agree with anything you say. I believe firmly that we can negotiate a fair compromise that saves the citizens of the city of Reading money and keeps our officers on the street as soon as we get rid of these lame-brained city council people we've got.
Mayor Jones will use an additional minute of his reserve.
It's just simply not the truth. The fact of the matter is we're spending money that we do not have. We're living beyond our means. It would be like each of you having 3 mortgages. You can't afford it. That's what it is. The unions try their tactics. Keep in mind, unions have been around a long time, and I think they're being too aggressive. They see the facts. We're out of money. We need to make changes in our spending. Each of us have to do that in our own lives. The current council has done just those things. We're making those tough decisions, but I guarantee you, if we allow the union to run our city, we will run this city into bankruptcy. I guarantee it. Not looking at the facts. The facts of the matter is, no matter how good our police and fire are, we cannot afford the benefits that we have today, and we need a more sensible plan, something that the rest of the nation has, instead of things that are found only in California. And they will still come. The pay and the benefits will still be fine. We can do better. Question number 7 for me. Mr. Murray, for years you supported subsidies to Turtle Bay in the tune of $750,000, $750,000, down to as little as $350,000, sometimes down as low as $250,000. Year after year, we've continued to subsidize Turtle Bay. There is a great difference between me and Ken. I have said that we need to wean Turtle Bay, and under this majority of council, we have done that. We have weaned them, and what do you know? They didn't fall off the face of the earth. They can still survive. But I asked Ken, being a fiscal conservative, all those years of paying millions, how do you justify being a fiscal conservative when they could have ran on their own?
Well, the truth of the matter is they couldn't run on their own. When I first got on the council back in the 90s, there were, as I recall, 3 different museum agencies in the community. And together they were sucking up about $1.2 million a year from city coffers. We reached an agreement with the Alliance of Museums when they formed into Turtle Bay to gradually reduce that subsidy, giving them time to find ways to support themselves. Probably 2% of the museums in the United States are not subsidized by government, if that many. Museums are a cultural institution that is reflective of the community. When I first was elected to the council, the subsidies were $900,000. When I left the council in 2000, whatever year it was, they were down to $350,000. And obviously they can survive. But it took that time for them to get there. Of course, I didn't want to choke them to death by not letting them have a hotel to make money. Frankly, because Turtle Bay has 150,000 visitors a year, of which 15,000 are school children getting an education, but you don't care about children.
Well, once again, Mr. Murray dodges the question. How can you be a fiscal conservative and continue to give thousands and hundreds of thousands of dollars away to a museum that can run on its own? We can continue to give Mike Warren $80,000, $90,000 a year. How can he justify that as a fiscal conservative? He cannot. So he points to me in other ways instead of sticking to the facts. The fact of the matter is Turtle Bay has over $100 million invested in it, and it can run on its own without public funds. More public funds, we can do more roads. We can work better with police and fire. We have more abilities when we're not giving away $750,000 to the projects that they do. $13 million of public funds on the Sundial Bridge. As you know, I didn't walk across it until recently, only on a fundraiser, but it's because my dislike for wasting public funds. A bridge there was appropriate, not a $26 million bridge.
Boy, I don't know where you make up your numbers from. The public investment, the taxpayers' investment in Sundial Bridge was $2.5 million. $2.5 million. McConnell Foundation paid over $20 million, and for that kind of money, they can have any bridge they want. We didn't pay $13.5 million, and you can't prove it. Everyone I've talked to, including our own public safety officers, knows that the current PERS system of paying 3% at 50 is unsustainable. In the free enterprise system, which I happen to support, an employee is free to go wherever he or she gets the best deal in the open market. Do you believe that the City of Reading alone and by itself can fix the PERS system without losing all of our employees? If not, what are you doing in association with other cities, the California League of Cities, and our legislatures in Sacramento to fix the problem? What engagement have you made at the state level to solve it?
What Mr. Murray is asking about is, do we wait until the state takes action, or do we take action now? He's saying we should not take action because other cities will still be at a 3% and 50 and will be at a distinct disadvantage. The facts of the matter is we cannot afford 3% at 50 right now. We simply cannot afford, and we cannot wait for the state to get around to doing those same kinds of adjustments. They are beginning. Cities up and down California are starting to make the changes necessary to live within their means. We are not going to wait for the state of California. That would take forever. Taking political will is very hard to come by in Sacramento. We've got more political will in Reading today with the majority of the council members than they will ever have in Sacramento, and we'll still be able to attract qualified police and fire. We do not have a shortage. We can be fooled as that if we don't pay these exorbitant prices that we will never have anyone good, and I say, prove it to me for the quality of life in Redding, California, and I say that's nonsense. We will still have good people.
So the answer is you haven't done anything at the state level or in conjunction with other cities, is that correct?
I'll use a minute to answer that question. The reality is, again, he's wanting us to go to Sacramento, to the League of California Cities, and there are probably some cities that have. I have personally not. The job is in front of us right now. He's saying, what have they done in Sacramento? My job is Redding, California. I'm the mayor of Redding. We're taking the bull by the horns in Redding, and we're living within our means. The fact of the matter is that if we continue on our path, and all the unions agree, no one is willing to do anything about it, except this council. We have set a course, and if reelected, along with council member Rick Pizzetti, come March, we will get to those negotiations and we will create a more sustainable plan. That's what we are elected to do. That's what we will do. We will not wait for the state. We will not wait for the League of California Cities. We are doing it right here. That's the fact of the matter. That's what you elect us to do, is to take action, to run our city, to take charge and control. And that's what we're doing. Question number 9 is a $1 million deal to the Lithia Motors that Mr. Murray concocted. This was a deal a few years ago, if you remember, that we were going to buy the Lithia property as a redevelopment project, which I don't believe it's a redevelopment project, and we were going to pay $8 million for it, even though that appraisal was several years old. It was really worth probably $4 or $5 million, thus throwing away $3 million of your hard-earned money. Mr. Murray concocted an idea that to give them a year's time to think about it, that they could have $1 million just for doing that. If even at that time they did not accept the deal, they would get $1 million of your hard-earned tax dollars. I would like Mr. Murray to explain that.
I'll explain it, but since you don't know anything about real estate, you may not understand. The council was divided. Actually, I didn't concoct the deal at all. There had been an agreement entered into, I forget by whom, with regard to the property where Lithia Motors is, the council was divided about whether to go forward with the deal at $8 million or $6 million or whatever the number was. Lithia was promising to build a brand new auto mall and center out at Airport Road at Highway 44 and expand with new franchises. That sounded like a pretty good deal to some members of the council. Other members of the council were not interested in it. I actually came up with a compromise, and the compromise was, we'll do the deal, Lithia, after you build the deal out on 44 and Airport Road. Go build it, and so we know you're telling us the truth. They backed out, and the deal never went anywhere.
Once again, Mr. Murray forgot about the $1 million that was on the table, and all they had to do was sit there for 1 year and do nothing. He forgot to mention that part.
That's not true.
Well, you didn't mention it. But
No,
nevertheless,
it's not true. That's why I didn't mention it.
Again, trouble remembering those deals. The reality is that we were going to buy a piece of property that had not been appraised, that had been appraised at the height of the market, and we darn well knew it wasn't worth $8 million. It was worth half that. They were ready to move forward, and luckily Lithia did not take the deal because the taxpayers would have been out of a lot of money, millions of dollars. These are the kinds of trick deals, slick deals that Mr. Murray, as a realtor, which clearly knows more than me about real estate, uses your public funds and risks millions of dollars. To me, the dollars that we make are earned hard. Every dollar counts, and those types of deals are incredibly important, and we cannot continue to do those types of deals any longer. And I'm glad to say we have not concocted any such real estate schemes like that of Mr. Murray anytime recently.
Actually, I didn't spend a dime on Lithia. Nobody spent a dime on Lithia. The car dealers represent approximately $4 million a year in income to the city of Reading. At that particular time, there was an issue where the county was going to, was being asked to create an auto mall in the county, which would have been a $4 million hit to the city income. We were trying to figure out a way to keep the car dealers in town. The deal to move out to Airport Road sounded like a good deal. However, Lithia was trying to cut a fat hog, and I said no, no. And when they couldn't cut a fat hog, they backed out of the deal. So despite whatever, you know, I may have a bad memory, but I don't make up fairy tales. It didn't happen. It didn't cost us any money. And it just proves that we need to be having a tax exchange agreement with the county so we don't have those kind of fights anymore. I think, as you will agree, Mr. Jones, the city of Reading has a cash flow problem. In March of last year, it was recommended that the council take advantage of a once every 2-year opportunity to lower the amount of our annual payments to PARS. A yes vote would have lowered our insurance payments by our insurance premiums by $600,000 per year, money that could have been used to save public safety positions. Virtually every other city in Northern California voted yes to preserve their cash flow during these difficult times. You voted no. You really not care how many public safety positions we lose or how high the response times become in pursuit of your my way or the highway agenda?
This is classic. Short-term Band-Aids for long-term problems. It's not the way to fix things, and we knew it. And we weren't going to take the easy way out. Long-term, this would have cost the taxpayers more money. Again, we're both considered to be fiscal conservatives, but who's watching out for your money? There was a clear choice here that we need to fix the core problem, not just take a Band-Aid approach, and they have done that many times. Ken is famous for it, not dealing with the true problem, instead dealing with a short-term problem. We can no longer do it that way any longer. We can continue to kick the can down the road year after year, and it leads us to the problems that we have right now. Some of those problems Ken Murray is directly responsible for, and now when he was booted off council in 2008, now he wants to come back because he can fix it. And he was partially there to create those problems because of Band-Aid, short-term gains for long-term lack of solutions. Taking the bull by the horns is never easy. It demands strong will, strong political will.
Or the ignorance to make the only decision made in a Northern California city to do what you did. No, it's more fairy tales. Bank a minute.
Can I have another question? Can we? All right. Well, I'm going to go back to my very first question, which was Stillwater. I had another deal, the Delta deal, but that was only for $500,000. That's small change compared to what's happened at Stillwater. Stillwater was interesting in that years ago when the federal government came in and they set aside half of the land for wetland mitigation, most developers at that time would have said, that's it. Your price per square foot just doubled and it's time to get out of this. The city pushed on. That was a serious mistake. We have many thousands of business acres in western Nevada, southern Oregon, and here in California. It is the wrong use of public funds to be speculating with your dollars as a business park. If we had a developer willing to come forward and say, I would like to partner with the city and build a business park, that's what the city can do. We need a new attitude at City Hall.
That's an opinion, and I disagree with it. My question? Patrick, when cities came into being here in the West, the first and most important employees were public safety.
And you were alive then, I were not.
Right, a sheriff. That was the first employee, a sheriff, and or a school teacher. All other responsibilities were borne by the citizens of the towns. Only later did towns get into the business of paving streets, building parks, issuing dog licenses or building permits. You claim to be a back-to-basics kind of guy. The people you're laying off are the most important to our way of life, and the ones you've allowed to keep their jobs at City Hall are historically the least important. Aren't you attacking the problem of declining revenues backward and to the detriment of what is most important to our citizens, their own safety?
Well, as you can see, Ken has been an excellent soldier today for the unions. The problem is we can't afford it. We need a more sensible, I don't know how many times I have to say that, but apparently it's a lot. We cannot support the benefits that we offer today. They were started in 2002. We cannot support them. They must change. Police and fire, extremely important. Your roads, extremely important. Water, wastewater, extremely important. We have a whole city to work and to make good for you, the taxpayer. Those are all of our responsibilities, and we take each one of them very seriously. We tackle each problem as it comes up and deal with the true core issues, not a Band-Aid effect. We can be puppets for the unions. I was endorsed by the unions in 2006, and then slowly I started seeing a different light.
You know, other cities have been able to negotiate with their unions. Take Red Bluff. They got a 12% concession out of their public safety officers. I suspect it's because they're better negotiators than you are, Patrick.
Well, it's possible. I'm certainly not perfect. I make errors. I make errors all the time, and when I do, I admit them freely. I am not perfect, but I am elected by the people, and I do the very best that I can. We deal with problems as they come up. I may not be the world's best negotiator, but when you're looking for flexibility and you're broke, I think the two don't go hand in hand. And this city is broke. We have things that are unsustainable today, and we have to get them in order. The ways of doing things in the past are gone. Now, I applaud Red Bluff for doing what was right and getting concessions from their unions, and I have asked the unions to step up and give those serious types of cash back, maybe forego a pay raise. For example, our police men have had a 26% raise through this last global recession. Not one time did they forego those raises, but paid other amounts. We have to do better. We're trying very hard to do the best that we can, and we are not done.
And in the process, you're protecting all of the top management at City Hall. You're letting the cops go, but letting everybody else get a free ride. You know, the reason other cities are able to negotiate is because they know how to negotiate. If I were on the city council, I wouldn't let a single public safety officer go, not one. I would negotiate, and I would have a negotiated settlement within 30 days, I think, 2 months max. And I have a history of doing that. Evidence. And if I didn't, I'd fire the guys at the other end of the spectrum, not the cops that keep me safe.
We'll deal with each problem as they come. It's funny how Ken talks about top management getting pays, but yet he gave the 20% raise to Mike Warren. He did that. We did not do that. He did not take action. In fact, he's helped create the problems. Now, we'll deal with management in good time, and that is coming as well. I believe they are overpaid, and action will be taken. We don't need to blame. Look at those guys. Look what they make. That's their way of dealing with problems. Look what they make. Look what they make. We should make more than what they make. Those types of games, those days are over. We do not need to blame others. We'll deal with each and every one as they come up, as we should. It takes a little time to get to each and every bargaining group. We have 8 unions, one unrepresented group, and it takes a little time, and we will deal with those. Ken is right. Some of our top managers are overpaid, and you're looking at the guy that helped make that happen.
You're also looking at the guy that never laid off a cop. You're also looking at the guy, at one of the guys, and in fact all of the guys and gals that have ever served on the city council have never laid off a cop. Never. It is the first responsibility of government. The first responsibility of government. There's never been a cop or fireman laid off in the city of Reading that's been paid by the general fund, ever. And we've had worse economic times. I get it. His question or my question? My question?
Well, I'm not going to ask a question of Mr. Murray. This is our last question, and I'm simply going to use the minute or two to simply say that I am a fiscal conservative. We have a tough job ahead of us. It is not going to be easy. You can see we're going to have difficulties. We're not going to agree on all things, whether Mr. Murray is elected or not. But I ask you to think hard come November 2nd about who you're going to put back at City Hall. Do you want true fiscal conservatives? They're willing to do the work of the people, to do what's right in these tough economic times. Or are you willing to put a slate of candidates that are controlled by the unions and run this city? That is the question. That is the overwhelming question that is going to take place over the next 2 months. I hope you can see from us that there is differences. There is differences in that word or words of fiscal conservatives. There are different ideas of what that means. I am firm, but I believe I am fair. And that is what we need today. We need people that are going to hold a tough line. I will use my last minute. And I will stay on this point because it's what is needed today. Today, this city has seen some of the toughest economic times. Mr. Murray continues to say we've seen tougher. I tell you what, with the assessed values that has happened in Shasta County, losing $1 billion in the last year or so during this downturn, this is by far one of the toughest times we're going to ever see. This is a recession that affects every one of us. And we need tough decisions today, and we do not need the city ran by the unions. We need strong, independent thinkers to help guide this city through one of the toughest times that we have ever seen. We can take the easy way out. We can make everyone happy. Or we can take the tough but fair stance on doing what's right for the long term. I'm committed to do that. I'm proud to be your mayor. and I would love to have your support come November 2nd. Thank you very much.
My last question. Ethics are important in an elected official. You went on a secret trip to Washington, D.C. at your developer friend Don Levinson's expense. Your fellow council members nor staff knew about the trip. When the secret came out, you promptly reimbursed for the trip. Now, I know you attended a new council members workshop in Sacramento at city expense shortly after your election. It was put on by the California League of Cities. You also have taken the mandatory ethics training required of city employees. How could you not know what you were doing was wrong? In addition, you have no authority to speak or lobby as mayor of the city of Redding without the council's specific authorization, which you neither asked for nor were given. Why these ethical lapses when you've had training? Did you not listen?
Mr. Murray is quite wrong. Oasis Road is the #1 priority of the city of Redding, and I have full authority as mayor of City of Redding to lobby for funds to come to Redding, California to put people to work, and that's what I did. I asked the city for funds. They said the account is a little low. And when I went to D.C., that didn't cost the taxpayers one dime. Whether it was the developer-funded trip or I paid for it, which ultimately I paid for it, $2,805, it didn't cost the taxpayers one dime. In reverse, Councilmember Murray a few years ago goes to Shanghai on your dime. Who's the fiscal conservative here? I'm working for you. I am trying to get dollars to Redding, California for infrastructure projects, a #1 priority. And it didn't cost you any money.
Interestingly, I went with the knowledge and permission of council, and you're totally wrong. Without specific authorization for council, you don't have a blanket authority to represent the city of Redding as mayor anywhere. That's an ethical truth. And if you don't know that, go study your books again.
Mr. Murray is wrong. Within a few weeks of me getting back from D.C., unbeknownst to me or entire city council, Mary Stagel goes to Washington, D.C. to lobby for an electric utility need costing the taxpayer thousands of dollars with no knowledge of the mayor, no knowledge from council at all. Who's running this city? Do we take the bull by the horns and do what's right and try to save taxpayers' money? Mr. Murray says it's unethical for me to try to save you money for your #1 priority that council has given direction on. Now, Mr. Murray may not like it, or not, he may or may not like it, but it is the #1 priority of City Council to get that interchange done, and I have authority to do it. It was the right thing to do, and I will do it again if the need comes up. I work for the people, and that's my job. That is, if that's unethical, then I would hate to look at Mr. Murray's background.
I thank you for your patience tonight and your interest in what's going on. It's obvious there are significant differences between Mr. Jones and I. I have never claimed to be perfect. On the other hand, I have always done my best. I have put thousands of personal man-hours into making the community a better place to live. Everything from serving on school boards to starting the creek cleanup program in town, which didn't cost taxpayers any money. But because I care about the community, I'm willing to go out and pick up the trash when it needs to be picked up. And I've done so, and several hundred of you have helped me every year. The 5th year is coming up this time. The reason City Hall exists is to provide services for the community, services for the taxpayer. As I said earlier, the #1 service I expect my city to provide me is public safety. You can't do that by laying off 24 cops and several firemen, as Mr. Jones has done. You can't provide that service. The allegation that I'm some tool of the union is an absolute joke. The only union that has supported me in my runs for office consistently has been the police union, because I've supported them. The other unions have not consistently supported me. And the only reason they're electing to support me now is because they know I know how to negotiate a contract, not because I'm a walkover. Anybody who thinks I'm in anybody's pocket is thinking completely wrong. When the Builders Exchange supported me, I wasn't in their pocket. You can ask Kent Dagg. He says so. When the Chamber of Commerce supported me, I wasn't in their pocket. I'm a very independent person. And the unions, despite their support, aren't going to have me in their pocket. But I think if Red Bluff, the city of Red Bluff, can negotiate a reduction in total pay for their employees with the agreement of their employees, and we can't, there's something wrong with the council. And that gets fixed by changing the council. Mr. Jones is waiting around till March when the Peace Officers Association's contract comes up for renegotiation. His plan is to impose whatever in his fertile little mind he decides is the right thing for the city of Reading. I think that's treating employees like they're sheep or something. The employees of the city of Reading are valuable assets, and they're also our neighbors. And they deserve to be treated like sensible human beings. They know the problems. We know the problems. It's a matter of getting someone to sit down across the table from them that they trust. They don't trust Mr. Jones at all, and that's why they're supporting me. The city exists to provide services. We're not providing the services. We're going to be 24 cops down. You think there aren't gang troubles in our future? There are. Robberies are already up 93% in the last year. Robberies are the first sign of gangs coming to town, because robberies are what happen to support drug habits. And yet, he continues to lay off cops. There's got to be a better way, and I think I'm the better candidate. Thank you for your attention.
All that pent-up anxiety, you may clap now. Kind of as a final note, because I know you didn't know what we were doing up here with these dry erase boards, but I think, we may use this again in the future. We were telling them how much time they had. So each table had a timekeeper, and each table had, keeping track of what question we were on, whether it was time to reply, or how much, how many extra seconds you had. They had 5 minutes of banked time, each of them. And so that's when they said, I want to use one of my minutes. Yeah, you could be bloviating right now, but it's too late. So that's why Mr. Murray had extra time at the end. He was not using up all of his bank time. So, in case somebody leaves and goes, well, that wasn't fair at the end, they have the ability to use the time however they like. So just from you guys, what do you think about this kind of strange format? Was it kind of fun? Yeah. I'm curious.
It hasn't really been done this way before, and
right.
So I'm sure, Mr. Murray and myself were nervous about how this would be, but
absolutely.
I think it turned out very well. I think we can get answers out in 30 seconds and in a minute. So, and the 5-minute float idea, I think worked very well.
Concur? What do you guys think? We decided to float it out there and see what you thought. So, okay, now the question goes to Mr. Bassetti, who had a 5-minute, hi, I'm a candidate for city council, but he had a situation with the family a couple weeks ago. Is it bizarre to do that now? Would you like to push that forward?
I think the people need to
I was like, he was kind of on the docket for that, and I'm like, this probably isn't going to be like what he, anyway, I just didn't want to cheat you without your permission. Okay, so at this point in time, these guys are going to go over, there are 2 classrooms over there, one says Ken Murray and one says Patrick Jones. We have the survival and preparedness groups meeting in the middle. Kingdom Patriots are working on the Wall Builders series. We've got the 5,000-year LEAP class all set up. And the folks that are brand new, if you want to find out what we're doing, you have questions and all that stuff, I'd scurry to orientation here. We're going to do that real quick. You'll get your, your little starter pack, and everybody be off and running. So there you have it. Go to the place you want to go to. Thanks for coming.